purpose in their generation. I think they all do. I think since Wilder and Tyson Fury had that
fight.
Yeah, I think that fight cemented them in a generation of great heavyweights. I really believe that.
Deontay Wilder's a great man.
Yeah, really?
Yep.
I don't know him.
You should. You should.
Yeah?
You should. You should take the time. You should take the effort, and vice versa.
Those are the words of Iron Mike Tyson as he was asked, or he responded to Jim Gray, which was on Hot Boxing with Mike. Shouts out to that podcast. Love the podcast. And he said, Deontay Wilder, is a good man, and Mike was like, really? I don't know him, and Jim Gray went on to say, of course, you should get to meet him, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about in Counterpunch. We are aware of somewhat of a cold war between two different guys, two different champs. One a current champ, which was the former champ, Deontay Wilder, and of course the legend Mike Tyson, which was the former unified champ, undisputed champ. Now, the reason why there was some underlying beef, not necessarily I feel from Mike Tyson, but I think for Wilder, because Wilder said some things that pissed a lot of people off. He did. He said that he could beat a prime Mike Tyson. He said he could beat a prime Mike Tyson. He went after Mike Tyson's resume also. That was another thing. And Mike Tyson really responded with, hey, he's supposed to say that. So Mike more or less, deflected what Deontay Wilder was trying to dish out. And my take on Wilder, I think he did, because we've seen this before. Floyd Mayweather did it, okay? Floyd Mayweather did it to Muhammad Ali. Because remember when Floyd was saying, he was like, yep, I'm the best ever, I'm the TBE. Yes, I'm better than Muhammad Ali. If you guys can remember that, And that ruffled a lot of feathers. And I think Wilder wanted to go down that same road as Mayweather, and it didn't pan out right for him. Maybe he was trying to be the bad guy or whatever, but when you hear people say Wilder's a good man, okay, based on what he said, based on the things that has came out of his mouth a lot of times, it's hard for people to really realize it. That's why Mike said, really, because Mike doesn't know him. Well, I think the underlying question is, why hasn't these guys sat down and talked? Mike Tyson has sat down. Of course, that's what they're talking about, the current heavyweights of now. He sat down with Tyson Fury. Of course, Tyson Fury was named after him, but he did sit down with him, and they had a nice little powwow, okay? Whereas that hasn't transpired with Wilder. I don't think Mike would want to talk to or reached out to Wilder, and I don't think Wilder reached out to Mike. I think what it is one of those things where Mike feels, and I think what he Mike's calmer these days. He's calmer if he's not fighting, because he's training, and I think he gets kind of amped and the ego starts pumping up just like of yesteryear. But he's more calmer in his 50s, and a lot of things he takes well. But I seen when he said, "Oh, he is." I don't know about that, because I don't know him. And people say those type of things. Mike says what he feels, but I think that has a lot to do with, the comments and the back and forth between, and it really is not a back and forth. I think that's coming from the comments that Wilder said to Mike, because I haven't really seen Mike say anything about Wilder except the opposition. Okay, the pudgy little dude, he's fighting, I'm sure he can fight him, but he's not fighting anybody. Now, he did say that. I did remember that, okay? Didn't want to leave that out. So it's one of those things I feel that Mike hasn't talked to Wilder, or Wilder hasn't talked to Mike. For that reason, I really don't know. But if I had to guess, one thing people like about Mike, regardless of all the crazy stuff, the ear biting and all this crazy stuff, the allegations and other categories, people looked up to Mike because Mike looked up to the fighters of yesteryear, the fighters that came before him. He had mad respect for even the guy he fought, which was Larry Holmes. He had mad respect for Ali. Ali was his idol. George Foreman. You know, these guys, Joe Frazier. He didn't have any bad thing to say about any of the fighters that fought. So a lot of times people looked at Mike. They might have thought, well, hey, he's this and that. But he had respect. He had respect for his elders. You know, and what fighters are doing more recently, you know, in this era, like, well, Floyd's era was over, but Floyd started this, hey, I'm better than everybody before me. You know, that rubs a lot of people wrong. Wilder continued it with, hey, I can beat Prime Mike in my time. He didn't say I was the best ever, you know, I don't think, you know, but he did say, yes, I will beat Mike Tyson. And I think, you know, him and Mike, they need to sit down. I think they need to talk, and that would be one hell of an interview. You know, in fact, I think because Wilder doesn't talk, he gets a lot of scrutiny. Okay, because again, I conducted an interview with one of his close friends, and what I seen was because he hasn't said anything, you know, or he hasn't really said anything lately. You know, a lot of people are free to say whatever they want about Deontay Wilder. You know, I don't know the man personally, so I can't speak on is he a good guy or not. Based on what I've heard, you know, there's a lot of things I didn't know that changed my perspective about Wilder in a positive way. But I think people will get that impression about Deontay Wilder unless or until he comes out and pretty much speaks for himself or addresses certain things. You know, especially with this Mike Tyson thing, okay? With this Mike Tyson beef, I feel that something needs to transpire where these guys need to sit down and at least get to know each other and see where they are to clear the air. But anyway, that's my counterpunch on Mike Tyson's comments towards Deontay Wilder. You guys tell me what you think Mike Tyson meant by what he said. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been counterpunching. Peace.